A Passage to India is a novel by English author E. M. Forster set against the backdrop of the British Raj and the Indian independence movement in the 1920s. It was selected as one of the 100 great works of 20th century English literature by the Modern Library and won the 1924 James Tait Black Memorial Prize for Fiction. Winesburg, Ohio is a 1919 short story cycle by the American author Sherwood Anderson. The work is structured around the life of protagonist George Willard, from the time he was a child to his growing independence and ultimate abandonment of Winesburg as a young man. The USA Trilogy is a major work of American writer John Dos Passos, comprising the novels The 42nd Parallel, 1919, and The Big Money. The three books were first published together in a single volume titled You, Appointment and Simra, published in 1934, is the first novel by John O'Hara. It concerns the self-destruction of Julian English, once a member of the social elite of Gibbsville. In 1998, the Modern Library ranked Appointment and Simra 22nd on its list of the 100 best English language novels of the 20th century. Henderson the Rain King is a 1959 novel by Saul Bellow. The book's blend of philosophical discourse and comic adventure has helped make it one of his most enduringly popular works. It is said to be Bellow's own favorite amongst his books. Native Son is a novel by American author Richard Wright. The novel tells the story of 20-year-old Bigger Thomas, a Black American youth living in utter poverty in a poor area on Chicago's South Side in the 1930s. Invisible Man is a novel by Ralph Ellison, published by Random House in 1952. It addresses many of the social and intellectual issues facing African Americans early in the 20th century, including Black nationalism, the relationship between Black identity and Marxism, and the reformist racial policies of Booker T. Slaughterhouse-Five, or The Children's Crusade. A Duty Dance with Death is a satirical novel by Kurt Vonnegut about World War II experiences and journeys through time of a soldier named Billy Pilgrim. It is generally recognized as Vonnegut's most influential and popular work. The Heart is a Lonely Hunter is the debut novel by the American author Carson McCullers. She was 23 at the time of publication. It is about a deaf man who does not speak named John Singer and the people he encounters in a 1930s mill town in the U.S. state of Georgia. An American Tragedy is a novel by the American writer Theodore Dreiser. To the Lighthouse is a 1927 novel by Virginia Woolf. The novel centers on the Ramsays and their visits to the Isle of Skye in Scotland between 1910 and 1920. Following and extending the tradition of modernist novelists like Marcel Proust and James Joyce, the plot of To the Lighthouse is secondary to its philosophical introspection. Claudius is a novel by English writer Robert Graves, written in the form of an autobiography of the Roman Emperor Claudius. Accordingly, it includes history of the Julio-Claudian dynasty and Roman Empire, from Julius Caesar's assassination in 44 BC to Caligula's assassination in 41 AD. The Way of All Flesh is a semi-autobiographical novel by Samuel Butler that attacks Victorian-era hypocrisy. Written between 1873 and 1884, it traces 4 generations of the Pontifex family. Butler dared not publish it during his lifetime, but when it was published it was accepted as part of the general reaction against Victorianism. Under the Volcano is a novel by English writer Malcolm Lowry published in 1947. The novel tells the story of Geoffrey Furman, an alcoholic British consul in the small Mexican town of Cuauhnahuac, on the Day of the Dead, November 2, 1938. The Grapes of Wrath is an American realist novel written by John Steinbeck and published in 1939. The book won the National Book Award and Pulitzer Prize for Fiction, and it was cited prominently when Steinbeck was awarded the Nobel Prize in 1962. Sons and Lovers is a 1913 novel by the English writer D. H. Lawrence. The Modern Library placed it 9th on their list of the 100 best novels of the 20th century. While the novel initially incited a lukewarm critical reception, along with allegations of obscenity, it is today regarded as a masterpiece by many critics and is often regarded as Lawrence's finest achievement. Darkness at Noon is a novel by Hungarian-born British novelist Arthur Koestler, first published in 1940. His best-known work, it is the tale of Rubashov, an old Bolshevik who is arrested, imprisoned, and tried for treason against the government that he had helped to create. Catch-22 is a satirical novel by the American author Joseph Heller. He began writing it in 1953. The novel was first published in 1961. It is frequently cited as one of the greatest literary works of the 20th century. The Sound and the Fury is a novel written by the American author William Faulkner. It employs a number of narrative styles, including the technique known as stream of consciousness, pioneered by 20th century European novelists such as James Joyce and Virginia Woolf. Brave New World is a novel written in 1931 by Aldous Huxley and published in 1932. Set in London of AD 2540, the novel anticipates developments in reproductive technology, sleep learning, psychological manipulation, and classical conditioning that combine profoundly to change society. Lolita is a novel by Vladimir Nabokov, written in English and published in 1955 in Paris, in 1958 in New York, and in 1959 in London. It was later translated by its Russian native author into Russian. The novel is notable for its controversial subject, the protagonist and unreliable narrator, a 37 to 38-year-old literature professor called Humbert, who is obsessed with the 12-year-old Dolores Hayes, with whom he becomes sexually involved after he becomes her stepfather. A Portrait of the Artist as a Young Man is the first novel of Irish writer James Joyce. A Kingsleyman in a modernist style, it traces the religious and intellectual awakening of young Stephen Dedalus, a fictional alter ego of Joyce and an allusion to Daedalus, the consummate craftsman of Greek mythology. The Great Gatsby is a 1925 novel written by American author F. Scott Fitzgerald that follows a cast of characters living in the fictional town of West Egg on prosperous Long Island in the summer of 1922. Ulysses is a modernist novel by Irish writer James Joyce. It was first serialized in parts in the American journal The Little Review from March 1918 to December 1920, and then published in its entirety by Sylvia Beach in February 1922, in Paris.